Hello, good day everyone. So I'm here. I recorded a video to reinforce the learning packet 1 on field methods in psychology. So the unit 1 actually discusses more about the introduction to psychological research. So for those who are surprised nga napaisip para kay ano ba, why are we talking about research when in fact field methods in psychology man ano on course description han Psych 301. So just to review, to give you a review, actually nag-orientation na kita September 7, 2020, yes. Nag-orientation na kita and then I already gave you an overview or parang course description of Psych 301. So just to give you a review, hano, field methods in psychology covers both quantitative and qualitative field methods. So from the word pa lang qualitative and quantitative, mapapaisip na talaga na we will actually talk about research. So this course, field methods, includes the design and administration of surveys, yes. At the end of the semester, you are expected to conduct surveys, interviews, and I don't know if this is possible, focus group discussion, since more of the activities that we will have is virtual, but maybe we can have that also, FGD. So learners will also be oriented on the use of secondary data and observations. So this course description is taken from the CHED CMO number 34 series of 2017. Okay, so as you can see, page 1 and new learning packet 1, you can see the course learning outcomes or the objectives for this unit. So first, you are expected to define science and its fundamental features. So at the end of this learning packet, dapat maaram na kita kung ano ba ang mga features hit science. And of course, at the end of this unit, na ma-explain natin why psychology is considered as science, diba? Kasi we claim that psychology is really a scientific study of human behavior and mental processes. So, paano ta nasiring na scientific hiya? So, number 3, you should be able to compare and contrast science and pseudoscience. You know, there are a lot of mga pseudoscience nga nagkakalat na internet, mga findings kuno psychology says kuno So, how can we say that science is actually different to pseudoscience? And psychology is not a pseudoscience, okay? So number 4, you should be able to describe a general model of scientific research in psychology and of course to give specific examples na maka-fit hito nga model. Fifth, explain who conducts scientific research in psychology and why they do it. So hirahino nga ba ang nagkakandakin research sa psychology? Distinguish between basic research and applied research. This is very basic. Masayon lang niya i-differentiate. I know that just by reading the learning packet 1, maaram na kamo anong difference nga duwa, but for the sake of elaboration and para mas maintindihan, we will discuss that later. Number 7, explain the limitations of common sense when it comes to achieving detailed and accurate understanding of human behavior. Okay, so this is important kasi sometimes we think na psychology, common sense ang pinapairal. Well, as the saying goes, common sense is not actually common. Pero, we are more than kitahan ng mga psychology practitioners or kamo, soon to be practitioners in psychology, is that we know that psychology is more than common sense, okay? It's more than pseudoscience. We have to be firm on that, na scientific talaga psychology, okay? And 8, define skepticism. Ano nga bang skepticism? And what is the role of skepticism in scientific psychology? And the last one, of course, it is expected na at the end of this unit na magkamay da kamuhin ma-recognize niyo na importante talaga ang research ha, psychology. And sana dili kita mabitter nga hala, nasiring waray math and psychology, but surprise, may psychological stat. May research. Siyempre, kung may research, kailangan hinanglan gyap kitahin mga, we should know bisa naman na basic stat la, di ba? So, definitely, it's a prank. Gawaray talaga math and psychology. So, I don't know if this is also the questions you have in mind, but based on the books that we have read, the basic questions that students have about research in psychology are this. Yan, nagtatanong sila, who conducts scientific research in psychology? Hirahino, tanan ba nga mga nagpa-practice in psychology kailangan mag-conducting research? Diba? So, hirahino, kung di man nga tanan, hirahino la. Okay? And second question, siguro, kabataan, does scientific psychology tell us anything that common sense does not? Kailangan ba talaga pairalin ang common sense in scientific psychology or not? Or, kaya ba kailangan pa ako mag-aram in scientific approach? Why should I bother? Especially if di naman ako magiging researcher. Kung gusto ko man lang maging clinical psychologist, or gusto ko man lang maging psychometrician ako, or gusto ko maging industrial psychologist, di ba? So, why should I bother studying scientific approach? Diba? So, amo itong mga pakiana. Sometimes kasi, I would like to study more on the disorders. I would napikla kita ang mga fields in psychology na sa rin kitang diri talaga ako magre-research. Is it even possible? Okay, so at the end of this unit, we will know nga kung possible ba ito na aton mga wish nga sana waray research sa psychology. Okay, so before we start, as you can see ha module, amugyap ini and pagtikang. So, naghatag anay ako usang example of a psychological research. Okay. So, nakabutang nga daha learning packet 1 that many people believe that women tend to talk more than men, with some even suggesting that this difference has a biological basis. Ayan. So, may na kita sinisiring preconceived nga idea nga nagkukonclude na dayon kita nga mas mayawit talaga ang mga babae kaysa lalaki. Because, nasiring pa nga mga findings, may da pa nagsasuggest na may da ini biological basis. Nga, ada talaga ito, naka-wired talaga ito biologically ha babae na maging mas mayawit, mas talkative compared to men. Yan. So, actually, may da pa nga ni mga sa site na mga statistics that showed na mga estimates that on average, ang babae daw kuno is may da 20,000 words per day. Habang ang mga lalaki daw is 7,000 words. So, nag-conclude ini nga mga findings, ang mga na nagkakalat na mga findings nga women love to speak way more than men do. Diba? So, kung gagamitin talaga common sense, masaling kita nga, oo, magyawit talaga mga babae, bisang panganit pag nag-uurupod, mga babae talaga mag-aringasa. Diba? So, balidayan kita mga sinisiring nga, nagko-conclude dayong kita hinsuga dito. So, as you can see, ini nga statistics is quite plausible. Kapanipaniwala siya, But, totoo ba siya? Ayan. The question is it true? So, there was a group of psychologists led by Matthias Mell decided to find out if it's really true na mas talkative talaga ang women than men. So, they checked if anyone had actually tried to count the daily number of words spoken by women and men. So, paano man nila checked? Diba, nasiring kasi dito, they checked. So, how? Of course, nangita rin mga related literature or studies. Okay? So, paano man nila nag-gather yung data? So, ini nga mga researchers, nag-conduct hini nga era study 369 college students. So ito nga 369 is composed of female and male students. So tanan hira nagsulot hin audio recorders while they went about their lives. So let's say nakatira eskwelahan or nakatira balay, sulot-sulot nila ito nga audio recorders. Okay? So, to make the long story short, asya niyan findings sa ni IRA research. So, they found out na ang mga lalaki, they have 15,669 words per day. Diba? So, this is in contrast na nato nakita previous nga information nga 7,000 kuno. So, imagine 15,669. While, ang babae naman is 16,215 words per day. So, sige kitaon tayo ni ko compare ta hera nga duwa, mas dako gihapon syempre and 16,215 words per day. But, since gutilaan population is not even a representative of the whole world, so, and also, out of 369 students, kutila talaga ang difference han female males. So this is really different from the findings and previous nga ako nipakita iyo nga 20,000 daw ang babae and 7,000 daw ang lalaki. Okay? So ano nga ba ang ira conclusion out of these findings? Okay. So there, nasiring nga di, gin-publish kasi nila ini nga ira findings or research hausa nga journal. Okay, journal nga ni reputable iton. Okay? So, these researchers summed up their findings as follows. We therefore conclude on the basis of available empirical evidence that the widespread and highly publicized stereotype about female talkativeness is what? Unfounded. So, biskang pa nakita natin didi, as you can see ito man, ini 16,000. Bisa mas dako talaga i-compare mo hiya hadi. Tungod kay guti lang ira difference, we cannot still conclude nga magyawit talaga ang babae compared lalaki kasi we don't have enough. Ayan. Asya kasi nin available nera nga evidence. And the evidence shows nga dili man gud sugad kadako ang difference. Okay? So, at the end of their study, unfounded lagi hapon ang female talkativeness. Okay? So next, okay, so kanina nag-discuss ako 9 objectives niyo. Kumbaga, at the end of this unit, kailangan ini nga 9 mabaruan niyo. So, yan na, i-discuss ko na by objectives. Okay? So, mag-start kita objective number 2. Nasaring kita that at the end of this unit, mai-explain na niyo kay ano nga ang psychology is considered a science. Okay? So, actually, damo na nagyakan hini. Kahuna kasi nera, di ba? Actually, ginyakan ko na iyo, this is very gas-gas, na pag mababaruan ni ba nga psychology ka, masiring dahil nira mo, sige daw, psychoha daw ako, psychoha. So, we know, di ba? We know naman that kung psychohon tahera right there, at that moment, it's really not scientific. Okay? And, nasyasakira, kaya ano nga dilita dahil nira ba sa psycho, at that moment, nasyakira. Actually, dire-dire dapat masyak kasi scientific study and psychology. Siyempre, kung scientific ito sa nga bagay, may process, diri ka agad-agad makakapag-conclude without enough evidence, diba? So, but, bisan pa sa ganito, nasusurprise lagi po nila nga science talagaan, psychology. It's not just common sense. So, pero, when we talk about astronomy, biology, chemistry, mas ring dahil kita nga, ito nira is talaga, ito lugod, science talaga ito hera. Diba? We don't have any problem with this kasi we believe that all of this are sciences. Bisan diri pa kita mag-explain, we already know that this is science. But, unfortunately, this is so sad, nasasyak talaga hera nga ang psychology is kumbaga ka-level hini nga mga studies nga science talaga kita. So, about hini nga tutulo, ini nga astronomy, biology, and chemistry, about hini hayra nga tulo, gina-consider hira nga science because there is something in common with them. Okay? May something in common haera nga tulo. Ano daw lang something in common haera? So, an era something in common is not actually their subject matter because as you can see in astronomy, they study celestial bodies. Ang biology, nag-study in living organisms. And chemistry, nag-study in matter and its properties. So, definitely, diri ito ang something in common na era that makes them a science. So, it's not the right one, okay? So, diri ito siya. Now, an equipment and techniques that they use. So, diri ito actually ang mga equipments na ginagamit ng astronomers, diri ang mga equipments na ginagamit ng biologist, and diri liwat lalo na ang mga equipment na ginagamit ng mga chemist ang nakakapag-prove na science hera. Ano nga ba ang mga factors na nakakapag-conclude kita nga these three are actually sciences? Well, as you can see here, the general way of understanding the natural world. Yan, the natural world. An era general way, asya itoan what makes them a science. Okay, so ano yung mga general way of understanding the natural world? Kasi, di ba, ang science starts with a question talaga. May talaga ito at the very beginning, may question. And the goal of science is trying to answer and question, and of course, to look at the evidences, and of course, to um, have a logic gihap, parang validity ng mga inferences. So that's something in common han astronomy, biology, and chemistry, that it starts with a question, it looks for evidences, and it follows logic. Okay? So, asya ito an nakasiring kita nga science hera. So, since ang psychology, okay, and psychology is, hay na. Okay, so kanina din nagawa. So, okay. So, since ang psychology is also following the same general approach to understanding the natural world, or one aspect of the natural world, which is the human behavior, ayan, hindi man, since na-follow luwat kita itong general approach to understanding human behavior, we also start with a question, and then we look for evidences, and we follow logic, then basically, science gihapon and psychology. So, we must be proud of that. Nga diri kila kita mga psychology, kay nag-aaram la kita mga common sense, Yes, may science kita, and we also base our assumptions and aton mga conclusions mga evidences diri kay mga mga hearsays la, or diri kay asya kasi ninya kanan kuan kalagsan diri so ganiton psychology, okay? So we follow the route, or mga we follow the process. We are systematic. Okay. So that's it. Next, objective number 1 naman ang aton aansaran. Sa nga define science and its fundamental features. So, just a quick review, Science is a general way of understanding the natural world. So, we start with a question and is followed by looking for an evidence to answer the question, and we follow it logically. Simple natin, science is a systematized body of knowledge, diba? So, that's science. Yun na naman, paano taman masisiring, ano ba ang mga features hit science? So, number 1, there is a systematic empiricism. Number 2, empirical questions. And 3, public knowledge. So, let's discuss this in detail. Let's start with systematic empiricism. So, let's define first, ano empiricism? Empiricism is learning based on observation. So, maro naman kita, when we observe, may da kita something nakikita. Okay? Nakikita. Observable kasi eh. Diba? We cannot say observable kung wala ito kakita. So, when we can also say that it is observable if may evidence. Okay? So, next, systematic daw. Yan. Sumiring nga kita systematic. Carefully planned, carefully planning, making, recording, and analyzing observation. So, dili lang kita nagpapabilinhan observation. But, ini nga mga observations are carefully planned, pinag-isipan, carefully ginhimo, gin-record, and gin-analyze. So that's why, that's the main reason why we cannot answer ito nga masiring nga, uy, say, kuha daw ako, or di gaya, may mag-iistorya, sugad-sugad ini, and symptoms na akong kilala. Ano ito ya? Ano ito tiya diagnosis? Hala! Kami nga nga mga psychometrician, hindi kami pwede mag-diagnose. Kamu pa ba ng mga estudyante, di ba? So, ayaw laan ay it's a no-no nga magda-diagnose dahil kita without even having evidences or further assessment and evaluation han tao. Okay? We have to be very careful because tao na aton clients. Okay? So, systematic empiricism. We learn based on observation and, of course, it's carefully planned out. Okay? Diri kay pataka la. May process talaga ito. Now, for example, on research ni Mel about talkativeness in men and women. Nasiring nga di, they did not trust other people's stereotypes or even their own informal observations. You know what? Bisan man kita, di ba? May kita mga informal observations like masrig kita. Kaya ano, ang resultan kan Mel research kay diri ko no magyawit ang babae. Ako mga classmates magyawit man. Ako kabugtuan magyawit man mga babae. 'Di ba? So yes, we have our informal observations. May talaga kita mga na-observe ano. But wala itong tuurin ni Ramel. Bisan ng mga stereotypes ng ibang tao. Instead, dito ira nag-focus han result han ira research. They systematically recorded. Yun ha. They systematically recorded, counted, and compared the number of words spoken by a large sample of women and men. Furthermore, when their systematic observations turned out to conflict with people's stereotypes, they trusted their systematic observation. So, tumuo dira, han resulta, han ira research. Kasi, research is a very rigorous process. Okay? Dirito ni patakala kasi we gathered enough data for the research para mabilngan tayo itong findings ngan para ngan gin-analyze itong findings para magkamaydahin systematic nga conclusion gihapon in the end. Okay? So number 2 fundamental feature of science is empirical question. Ano siring ta kanina han empirical na siring through observations. Okay? Can be done through observations. May mga ebidensya nga makikita. So, empirical questions are questions about the way the world actually is and therefore can be answered systematically observing it. Okay, so maringan ito systematic, it is planned carefully. Okay? There is a process. So, for example, the question of whether women talk more than men is empirical in this way. Yes, that's an empirical question. Either women really do talk more than men or they do not. This can be determined by systematically observing how much women and men actually talk. Okay, so this question is actually parang measurable hiya, kasi ma-observe ta hiya. Okay? So, actually, dili tanan na questions are empirical. Okay, nasa rin nga di, there are many interesting and important questions that are not empirically testable. And, diri mababatunhan science. So, ano ba ini nga mga questions nga diri nababatunhan science? These are questions about what? Values. Whether things are good or bad. Paano taman masisiring that something is good or bad? Ano na aton ebidensya? Ano na aton observation? Ano na aton, yes. Paano kita mag-observe if things are good or bad? Ano aton basihan? Diba? So, these are questions that science cannot answer. Ano nga ba unjust? Or ano nga ba it unjust? What is beautiful or what is ugly? Diba? So these are questions that are not empirical and not testable. So therefore, diri mababato ng science. Okay? So diri man nga tanan nga questions mababato ng science. May mga limitations gihapon. So, let us all be mindful of this distinction. Diri nga tanan nga questions nga gusto naton um, i-research are actually researchable, di ba? So, diri nga tanan na questions are testable. And number 3 is public knowledge. So, what do we mean by this? Yan. So, ang public knowledge naman is about articles. Yan. Writing an article for publication in a professional journal in which they put their research question in the context of previous research. Describe in detail the methods they used to answer their question and clearly present their results and conclusions. So, when we say public knowledge, it has something to do with the related literature. You know what, it's important before you come up with, especially hapamatika mo, because in the end of this kuan, before matapos sining a unit, you're expected to really come up with a research. Okay? Mini research. Diri ka din isugad ka rigoroushan psychological or research in psychology ni yung subject soon. But, yan na pala pag-practice na kamo. Okay? So, before you come up with a study, we really have to take into consideration ang mga previous nga researches nga related mo topic na gusto. Okay? So, that's public knowledge. So, publication is an essential feature of science for two reasons. Kaya ano nga, pag namimiling kita ng related literature, kaya ano importante na mamiling lawat kita ditohan mga published na. Because publication is a social process. Okay? Social process because there is a large-scale collaboration among many researchers. Ayan. So, yes, may daliwat growing community para mga researchers. As you can see, may dito ha ResearchGate, damula, diba? In fact, ito sa nga journal, diri ito yung mabubugos without different researchers nga nagka-conduct in research. And also, ang mga current scientific knowledge and aton mga mag-aram at this moment is actually based on mga iba-iba nga studies and iba-iba nga researchers. Yan. So, this is actually a shared knowledge. And aton mga nababaroan niya na, mga facts, is actually resultahan mga iba-iba nga researches. Also, what is good about publishing it sa nga research because it is self-correcting. Okay? The methods of the scientists or researchers can be flawed. Yes, di talaga actually perfect ang mga researches. In fact, may talaga ito mga margin of errors. And maybe ang mga conclusions na nakakamap ito sa nga research is incorrect. So, the process of publishing an article or a research can detect and correct these errors so that over time, ang mga scientific knowledge or mga facts nga aton mababaruan, mga based on scientific na mga findings, reflects the way the world actually is. Para naman diri kanugon ang pag-research, ano? Nga para reliable in ato yung mga knowledge or mga information nga nag-gather. So, that's it. So, now let's answer objective number 3. Yan. Yan na naman, you are expected to compare and contrast science and pseudoscience. Okay? So, as you can see here, pseudo means not genuine or false. In other words, ang pseudoscience is just like false science. Dili ka matuuran. Okay? So, activities and beliefs that are claimed to be scientific by their proponents and may appear to be scientific at first glance but are not. This is what we consider pseudoscience. Mukhang kapanipaniwala naman, pero actually, hindi talaga siya totoo. Okay? So, there are actually a lot of information na nakakasiring kitang hala, ungod talaga ini kasi pulanaan pulano nagyakan hini. Uy, ungod talaga ini kasi nakita ko ini sa Wikipedia, 'di ba? So, okay, so we have to be mindful of this. Okay? Since we claim that psychology is a scientific study, so we really have to be scientific. Okay? Think scientifically. Yan. So, I'm gonna show you an example of a, what do you call this? An example of pseudoscience. I don't know if you're familiar of this, biorhythms theory. This one. Biorhythms theory. Actually, this should not be confused with sleep cycles or other biological cycles. Kasi, mga scientific talagang basis had to. Ini kasi nga biorhythms, if you will look at it, bisan pa internet, damo na talaga ang nagyayakan nga notorious talaga ini nga theory. Parang it's not realistic. So, ano nga ba ang basic assumption or idea of this biorhythms theory? So, the idea of this is that people's physical, intellectual, and emotional abilities run kuno in cycles that begin when they are born and continue until they die. So, may kita sinisiring nga tulo nga cycle. May physical cycle daw, may daw intellectual cycle. Yan, as you can see, physical, may da kuno emotional, and intellectual cycle. And physical cycle daw lasts for about 23 days. Yan. So, around the day. Physical. Tapos, an intellectual cycle naman, a period of 33 days. Adididi. While an emotional cycle daw is a period of 28. Yan. Here. Okay. So, natuod ba ka mo na iyo physical cycle, iyo intellectual cycle, may tapos emotional cycle, gibagan puro parehasan menstrual cycle ang babayi na may adalahiya peak, tapos may adalawatiya lowest point. Natuod ba ka mo ito? Because ako personally, I do not believe hiton. Nasiring kasi, so ibig sabihin kung ungod man ito, for example, if you had the option of when to schedule an exam, you would want to schedule it for a time kundi an imo intellectual cycle is at its peak. For example, didi uho. As you can see, di ba, green man didi, green and intellectual. So, for example, kung makakapili ka ang date ni mo exam, well, most likely, pipilion mo adi nga day. Ini didi. Because that is the peak of your intellectual ability. Okay, sige ha, 16th day ako magte-take and test because baltok ako ito nga panahon. Syempre, diri ako didi. Because, or didi, I will not choose that because critical day ito, hanakon intellectual aspect. Or, kung emotional naman, this is the peak of your emotional, creative and positive period. While adi naman is physical, poor immunity to minor illness. So, dapat ini nga mga panahon, diri ako magkasakit kasi, or magkasipon kasi magtutuloy-tuloy na yan, magiging COVID. Charot. Okay. So, natuod ba ka mo hini? So, actually, this is considered a pseudoscience. Okay, there is no good reason to think they exist. Waray man mga ebidensya. Kung may naman ebidensya, parang siguro very few la. Okay, so, that's it. Now, let's compare and contrast science and pseudoscience kasi it's very important. Dapat maram kitahan difference. Okay, so ang pseudoscience avoids falsifiability, while ang science naman valorizes or encourages, embraces falsifiability. So ano nga ba again ang falsifiability? This is, look at the right side of your screen, the ability to be confirmed or disconfirmed. Ayan, ang pseudoscience as much as possible, namimiling lahirahin mga information that can confirm hanira finding. So, diri mako-consider nga scientific. While ang science naman, in kakarawat la niya, if this specific finding will confirm haniya current findings or research or magdi-disconfirm. Because that's how science work, diba? Para makita talaga kung ano ba ang ungod. So, you also have to consider the the findings that could prove or disprove your findings. So, ano man liwat ang pagkakaibahan? Measurement and pseudoscience and science. So, measurement has pseudoscience, very vague. Vagueness in measurement. So, sumari nga kita nga vague. Kimbutan ko na nga din mga definition sa right side para diri ka mo malipat. Not precise. So, diri sabihin, diri hiya sugad ka measurable kasi vague. It is not precise. Pero ang science is measurable and kung i-measure mo ya, accurate and measurement. Okay. So next, the third one is unproven as false equals true. Pseudoscience, kapag ka ang findings ng era study, sigunta, unproven nga, waray ka prove nga, diri adto tinuod, so nagkukonclude dayon hera nga, siguro ungod. Kasi waray ka prove nga mali so ungod. Science, it's different because kung era research na ang findings nila unproven nga diri ungod adto nga idea or statement, then at the end of the study they will put it era findings or conclusions nga unproven talaga. Okay? Unproven because there is no evidence that could back up ito nga claim nga diri parehas sa pseudoscience, baka na malawaray ka prove nga diri ungod na. Diba? Bagan waray hiya middle area. Bagan black and white la hiya. Pag diri black, edi white. So, ganito ang pseudoscience. Ang science diri. Okay, may the middle ground. Wherein, kung waray na prove nga false, edi unproven lagi hap, we will not conclude right away nga, okay, waray ka prove nga false, edi true. Hindi ganon yung science. Okay? So, that's science. Systematic talaga and diri bias. Okay? Talagang carefully pinag-iisipan. A very rigorous process. Now, let's move on to confirmation bias and pseudoscience. Have you experienced that nga sigunta nala babayi ka? Okay, babayi ka and then nagkamayda ka na parang assumption that your boyfriend is cheating on you because number one, nakita mo hiya nga nagtitinext siya bisan magkaupod ka mo. Tapos pag kukuha niya iya phone, pag kukuha mo niya phone, gintatago niya. 'Di ba? So nagkakamay din kita parang okay, feeling ko nang bababae talaga hiya. And then you will look kan iba-iba pa nga mga signs nga nang bababae hiya. You know what? That can actually be a confirmation bias because we only search for interpret, favor, and recall information. Kung baga nagfo-focus na lakitahan mga information that will confirm or support tan aton mga beliefs or values. For example, di ba? Ay mga times nga nasa kita ala imo na gin finukusan ang mga butang na ginihimo niya that could prove na talagang nang bababae siya. Okay? Numbalo niya password, ganito, ganyan. Paano naman ang mga butang, like for example, ilang adlaw gintatago niya phone ha imo, pero pagka kinabuhasan, ginpapakita naman niya or naka-access mo naman niya Facebook the other day. So, ito naman, gina-disregard mo because that does not support an imo nahimo nga belief nga nang bababae hiya. Okay? So, later on, I will discuss it further. Bahid kasi malipungan ako ng example, ano. So, that's it. It's not scientific if you will just focus han mga butang na makaka-confirm la. Pero we disregard the information nga makaka-disconfirm. Okay? So, let's go back again with falsifiability. What ay ito falsifiability? If it could not be disconfirmed. Kung puros la confirm, di really what ito hiya scientific. Okay? Parang disregard mo. So, science, actually, we emphasize on refutation. So, namimiling kitahin something that could refute an existing statement or idea to come up with a new knowledge. So, ganito it's science. So, next, about parsimony naman. Let's define first what is parsimony. I know that na-discuss ko na ni TOP na sarang kita nga parsimony, nasa kita, the simpler, the better. Yan. Ang science talaga ganyan. Gusto talaga nila, the simpler, the better. Okay? So, ang pseudoscience, sometimes, kulang hin parsimony. Kulang, parang nagiging complicated ang mga concepts, mga ideas, mga findings. But in science, priority naton na mapadali, na may da mga simpler explanations and behavior hitaw. The simpler, the better. Okay? Huwag na natin pakomplikaduhin ng lahat. Pwede man taunta nga. Simple la, di ba? So, there's also a reversed burden of proof, has pseudoscience, and there is a burden on claimant on science. Okay? So, on science, let's focus on yung science. Nagfo-focus la kita han something that is true, that may produce an evidence on the claim. Pero ang pseudoscience, reversed burden of proof. Okay? Dinhi naman, magkikita kita, kasi ang pseudoscience nagfo-focus masyado han mga magko-confirm haera. Yan naman, ang mga scientific, o mga scientific critics, mga scientifical critics, tungod kay ang pseudoscience nagfo-focus sila makaka-confirm haera. Ang gibibiling naman han mga scientific critics yan na adton mga butang na makakapakita nga dirito ungod. Okay? How can I explain this? Parang it's somehow very difficult to explain. For example, if you believe on Santa Claus, you know what I mean talaga scientific nga findings nga ungod hi Santa Claus. Ngay Santa Claus, 'di ba? Ano hiya? Nagra-ride hiyahin mga reindeers. We all know that reindeers could not fly. Pero TV, 'di ba? So you can see in mga pelikula, hi Santa Claus nga lupad upod an reindeers. Okay? So if you are a fanatic of Santa, you will really mangungugat ka talaga that Santa really exists and the reindeers can really fly. But those who believe in science, syempre kasi we focus on empirical evidence. Kailangan may mga ebidensya kita. So what we will do is we will let a reindeer at the top of the building fly. Okay? Because we would like to reverse the burden of proof. And then, unfortunately, nahuhulog ang reindeer. So that proves our claim nga diri man talaga ungod nga nalupad ang reindeer. And lalo na, diri makakasakay Santa Claus. Diba kasi an image ng Santa Claus is matambok. And then, maangkas pahan reindeer nga diri man nga ni nalupad. Diba? So parang from there, kung mabase kitahan science, talagang diri true and Santa Claus and the reindeers. Okay? So, that's the burden on claimant. Kasi yung claim ta nga diri ungod an reindeer, while the reverse burden of proof naman is napakita ta that it's not true. Do you understand? Anyway, if you have questions, you can PM and all. Pero as you can see, di ko naman kailangan igtag-usa-usa pa ang mga factors that differentiates, kumbaga, distinguishes pseudoscience from science. You can already see that pseudoscience is really not scientific, okay? Next. As pseudoscience, there is a secrecy of data. Yes, ibig sabihin diri good tanan gin di-declare ang tanan nga data nga na-gather. However, has science naman, there is a publication of data. The proof of the publication of data is through research journals and through mga reputable na mga scientific journals, mga researches, and all. Now, Oh, dili pa nga ito. Okay. Let's Oh, we cannot go back. Anyway, we will discuss that later. Didi ani kitahan science by press conference and science by peer review. So pseudoscience usually pag mga diri pagud hiya scientifically proven, nakaka-observe ba kamo nga makikita mo ya YouTube, makikita mo ya mga news, makikita mo ya mga vlogs, makikita mo ya mga interviews sa TV, but you cannot find it bisan ano nga mga research journals. That's pseudoscience. Parang dili pa sugod ka proven pero gito na ginpa-publish, ginpapakita na ha TV. But science is nag-undergo talaga yahin peer review. Okay, may ada process. So, about peer review, na dire ako pag-advance pag-discuss, but learning packet 2, actually done na ako. As of today, done na ako mag-print ni ULP2. So, naghuhulat na lang ako second batch of distribution. So, and peer review will be discussed in further, learning packet 2. Okay, so now let's move on to ad hominem and ad rem. So, and pseudoscience is ad hominem. It is an argument which is often a personal attack on someone's character or motive rather than an attempt to address the actual issue at hand. So, I would like to focus on the part nga nasa nga, it does not attempt to address the actual issue at hand. Kumbaga, marami pa siyang paligoy-ligoy. Okay? So, it's a character of a pseudoscience. Characteristics. While ang science naman is ad rem. Yan. It's arguing to the point. Kumbaga, on point. An iyagin. Kung nag-gather man yan data, talagang related han iya SOP or statement of the problem or related talaga han objectives mismo han iya research. On point. Diri kay nagpapaligoy-ligoy pa or namimiling pahin mga ibang mga information which is actually not covered by han iya research. Okay? Now, pseudoscience is more on anecdotal, while science is more on empirical. So now let's define what is anecdotal. This is based on personal accounts rather than facts or research. Okay, so ang mga anecdotal evidences, makikita mo ito sa mga blogs, mga medyo biased because parang based lang own experience. While an empirical naman, of course, these are based on observation and or theory, ganun, or parang based talaga on scientific process. Okay? And pseudoscience, from the word holism, it attempts to explain the world in general or people in general. When in fact, di rin man kasi pa-present tao, di ba? So, it's not good that we will take a whole, kumbaga, a general approach to everything. Kasi sometimes talaga ibaan situation hadi-hadi. So, science goes for reductionism other than holism. Kumbaga, ginhihimay-himay han science. Okay? Reductionism. Now, let's move on to pseudoscience. Since nga ni nasa rin kita, diri manggudiya sugad ka scientific, so kulang hiyahin theoretical agreement. Pero good mga theories that could support ito nga mga findings. Kung may adaman, very few. Okay? And while on science naman, acceptance of different paradigms, different theory, and makakapag-back up. Okay? And the last characteristic kan pseudoscience that differs from science, iton nga nagfo-focus talagahin mga key persons. Okay? Diri parehas sa science nga shared endeavor. As you can see, publication, di ba ang kanina nasa ring ako, nga may daliwat itaton mga knowledge kinababaroan niya na is actually a result of a lot of researchers. Kumbaga, mga information or mga researchers na pa-publish in era studies sa mga reputable journals. So, basically, ang mga information and mga knowledge natin maaram yan na is a shared endeavor of different theorists, psychologists, and that's it. talagang it's not just focusing on one person, but damo talaga ng mga people and nakapag-approve nga this idea is really existing or true. While and pseudoscience naman, they just focus on key persons. They do not encourage collaboration from other professionals. Okay? Now, we still have 10 slides left, but we can do this. Okay, so objective number 4, describe a general model of scientific research in psychology and give specific examples that fit the model. So this is the model that you can find on page 5 of your module. So it generally starts with the researcher formulating a research question. Okay, and next, based on the research question, nagkakonduct na hin study which is designed to answer the question. Ayan, so nag-empirical study na. And after that, of course, nagkakamay din na hin analysis of the results. And after that, nagdodraw na hin conclusions, mga conclusions out of the findings na makaka-answerhan question. Next, of course, magpa-publish nahan results so that magiging parte nahan research literature. Ayan. So, kung nag-research ka na and na-publish mo na, magiging part na yahan research literature. But, research literature is asya kasi gihapon ito ang mga sources and mga new research questions. So, magkakamay da nga dahin, may kita ta nga cycle inihiya. Research literature and research question because a new research leads to new questions and will lead to also to new research. Okay? So, ito nga bagang cycle and research literature and research question. Also, as you can see a model, nag-indicate liwat tidi nga this informal observations or practical problems can actually kumbaga pwede maka-inspire ha aton to create a research question. But, bisan pa ha, ano pa ito nga mga cases, biskan pa mga informal observations or practical problems can inspire us to generate a research question, maagi lagi hapon kitahin research literature. We will also check hindi ba nga mga literature para makita ta if na-answer na ba ini nga aton research question han iba nga researches. Kaya kung waray pa, asla to natin magiging basis and aton magiging process na naton existing research. Okay? So, an example of this is, balik na lang kita naton example, ano, kanina pa, about han talkativeness in men and women. So, nag-start talaga ang research question han mga stereotypes na may adaan tawo about han talkativeness in men and women. And ano next na ginhimo? Actually, nag-start herahan research literature. Kinkita nira, kasi 'di ba waray pa talaga, based han ira research literature, waray pa ngayon na kapag actual nga ihaphan mga words han men and women. So, asyon ira naging basehan, hanira pag-conduct han study, yun, asyon ira gusto i-address. And then they had conducted a careful empirical study. They analyzed also the results. And then they found out nga very little laan difference between men and women. And that is why asyan era naging conclusions nga unfounded lagi hapon ani nga talkativeness in women. Okay? And the next one is nag-publish herahan era research. And publishing and research is not actually the end of the story. Kumbaga, hindi nagtatapos dyan because ini nga imo research work someday, if you become a researcher, This will also suggest many new questions. Makaka-inspire lawatinihin iba nga mga researchers to know more or to research more hini nga topic nga imogin discuss. Okay? Okay, so that's it. Now, who conducts scientific research in psychology? So basically, there's a long list kung hirahinoan nagkakanducting research sa psychology. So just to give you a straight to the point nga answer. Yes, tanan nga field in psychology nagkakandak and research. So waray kita lusot. Okay? So tanan, bisan ano nga field in psychology nag-research. In fact, you cannot get the license of psychometrician, psychologist, guidance counselor, or whatsoever kung dili ka mo mag-undergo pag research. Dili ka mo mag-conduct in study, di ba? In fact, it's very absurd naman if nag-study ka in human behavior but you do not conduct research para maging updated in knowledge naton ha research, ha psychology, right? So, I think it's just a parang required na ito sa aton field that we become inclined to research. So, ayola ka mo kanega hiton. Research is good actually if you learn more about it. Actually, I'm just a newbie gihapon han pagiging researcher. So, I'm kinda liking it naman. Before, I do not have the guts to really dive into research kasi parang kakukuri. It matrabaho, 'di ba? So, pakiana naman, why? Why they do it? Why nagkakanda ka rin research in psychology? So basically, they do this for professional and for personal reasons. Okay? So that's it. And syempre ni ba, out of curiosity gihapon. And para liwat professionally, we can also grow as a psychology practitioner. Okay? Now, let's distinguish basic research and applied research. So this is very basic. Um, Basic research is conducted for the sake of achieving a more detailed and accurate understanding of human behavior. Okay? Kung gusto natin na mas maintindihan pa natin accurately and more detailed and pag-intindihan human behavior, then that's conduct basic research. An example of this is, an aton example na sige natin binalik-balik kanina, ang talkativeness men and women. Applied research naman is you conduct the research because you would like to address some practical problems. So this is a good type of research kasi may ada kita ma-contribute, 'di ba, sa society. Kaya we would like to address usa nga practical problem. For example, research on the effects of cell phone use on driving was prompted by safety concerns and has led to the enactment of laws to limit this practice. So, ini nga study about the effects of cell phone driving, naging basis para mag-create mga laws or regulations about this. Diba? So, maupay liwatan applied research. So, I suggest that you try to pursue applied research. So, this is actually part of the exercises later on. I know that nabasa niyo ang mga learning packets, and yes, exercise 1 is about basic research and applied research. I hope na naka-answer na kamo ito dito nga part. Now, objective number 7. Matatapos na kita, tiwala lang. Objective number 7, explain the limitations of common sense when it comes to achieving detailed and accurate understanding of human behavior. So, pakiana, do we use common sense sa psychology? Kailangan ba talaga natin gumamit scientific approach to psychology? Can we not just reach the same conclusions based on common sense or intuition? Ano nga ba? Let us define common sense. Nasa na yung common sense? is a sound practical judgment that is independent of specialized knowledge, training, or the like. So you don't need training to get common sense. Parang it's just part of our intuition. Parang natural na ito haaton. Okay? It's inside of us already. So, tama ba that we use this in scientific psychological research? Yes, may dagat mga intuitive beliefs, lalo ng mga babae, di ba? You trust your gut so much, yung mga intuitions. Yes, totoo ito, but nasiring nga di, it's called folk psychology. Okay? We all have intuitive beliefs about people's behavior, thoughts, and feelings, and these beliefs are collectively referred to as folk psychology. So, although ang mga folk psychology naton is sometimes accurate, na parang swerte-swerte lang yan, sometimes nag-work, sometimes diri, but may mga times talaga lawat that it is not working. For example, ano ba talaga? Pag aringit ba kita, should we let it all out or not? Nasi nga di, most people believe that anger can be relieved by letting it out. Pinapalabas daw. Like, punching, screaming, di ba? Pag aringit ako, kailangan igawas ko para mahuman na ini. Di ba? That's the common advice that we get. Kung naurit ka, sige, sunto ka ito. Kung naaringit ka, sige, banya ka ito dito ng siminto. Di ba? Kaya may cathartic effect kuno ito. But scientific research, however, has shown that this approach tends to leave people feeling more angry, not less angry. Okay, so bagan mas nare-reinforce tugod kunuan aggressive behavior if we express our anger every time that we feel it. Okay, that's based on scientific research. Okay, so ano nga ba? How can our intuitive beliefs or common sense about human behavior be so wrong? Number one, it's because kung na-rely kita natin common sense, we also tend to rely on mental shortcuts. Kumbaga, di rin na kita nag-think carefully, di rin na natin pinapag-isipan ng mabuti, because masettle na lang kita mental shortcuts kasi common sense na ito hiya eh. Or, for example, if a belief is widely shared, ano na hiya eh, parang kalat na nga, ang babae talaga mas mayawit kaysa halalaki. And also, gin-endorse na ito ng mga ibang mga experts. And parang it makes sense naman. So, siguro totoo yan. Diba? So, it's not how we study behavior. Okay? Not because it is sikat that it's really true. Okay? Not because it's on trend nga talagang reliable ito. Okay? So, let's not rely on common sense kasi rin pala di mental shortcuts. Parang waray ka na mag-undergo ang systematic process. Nag-conclude ka na lang. Kasi actually ito ang sikat eh. That's what a lot of people believed. Okay. So, next. Confirmation bias. Amo na nila kung sinisiring haiyo kanina. We then tend to focus on cases that confirm our intuitive beliefs and not on cases that disconfirm them. We tend to rely on mental shortcuts in forming and maintaining our beliefs. Okay. So, it's also a mental shortcut and confirmation bias. Kasi, na-focus na lakitahan makaka-confirm hini nga idea, pero dili na kita na mamati han mga nagdi-disconfirm. Parang it's parang being stubborn on a specific idea. Nga dili na kita na-acceptin mga corrections. Okay? For example, once we begin to believe that women are more talkative than men, we tend to notice and remember talkative women and silent men. But, siya na itong sinisiring confirmation bias. We ignore or forget silent women and talkative men. Diba? Totoo yan. So, that's confirmation bias. For example, Friday the 13th. Nasiring kita, agi ungod talaga itong Friday the 13th. Kaya hanungo na liwat. Na-disgrasya ako Friday the 13th, tan motor. Tapos, Friday the 13th liwat ito, yung bulagan ako na akong uyab. 'Di ba? So, nasa rin na kamo nga, Friday the 13th talaga is malas. Damo na didisgrasya ito nga mga panahon or damo nasasakitan ito nga mga panahon. But, have you also considered ang mga panahon na Friday the 13th pero walang nangyari sa'yo? 'Di ba? So, that's it. And the last one, kay anong danay wrong talaga an aton common sense. Because we also hold incorrect beliefs in part because it would be nice if they were true. 'Di ba? For example, um, adihiya. Kung hino ba na iyuan nagda-diet, ano, I don't know if you're familiar with this, kasi ako I'm very familiar with this. Siyempre, gusto ko gumasa, ano. So, I'm really reading a lot of tips. Paano ba talaga ako magasa? Okay, it seems it's so hard when you give birth, no? Makulit talaga. So, for example, many people believe that calorie-reducing diets are an effective long-term treatment for obesity. Eddie, take note ha. Effective long-term treatment for obesity. Yet, a thorough review of the scientific evidence has shown that they are not. People may continue to believe in the effectiveness of dieting in part because it gives them hope. Ayan. Naniniwala ka kasi na you really hope na totoo yun. It gives them hope for losing weight if they are obese or makes them feel good about their own self-control if they are not. Okay? So, kaya ano nga nasa rin kita nga, based on scientific evidence, diri ineffective. Di ba may da iba nga, okay, kakaunong ko ini kasi mas less and calories ini compared hadi. Diri lawat ito niya effective nga long term, effective siguro ya for a short term period. A long term naman, posible nga diri kasi ang imo mga gin-restrict nga mga foods, maabot ang punto na when you cannot hold it anymore, instead of restricting, nagbi-binge eating lugod kita. Okay, so that's somehow not real pan long term. Siguro, magasa ka for a while, but later on, magkakameda ka na problem with, syempre, magkakameda ka mga unusual, unwanted cravings because you were restricting yourself too much. Okay? Okay, for the objective number 8, define skepticism and its role in scientific psychology. So, ano nga ba skepticism? Is it even important in scientific psych? So, nasa rin nga these scientists, especially psychologists, understand that they are just as susceptible as anyone else to intuitive but incorrect beliefs. This is why they cultivate an attitude of skepticism. So, ano nga ba ang skepticism? It doesn't mean na pag skeptical ka, it doesn't mean nga distrustful ka na or cynical, or does it mean questioning every belief or claim one comes across. It doesn't mean nga tara na lang agaya ka, kukwestiyonon mo. Okay? It doesn't mean nga sugad ito. But skepticism in scientific psychology is pausing to consider alternatives. Okay? When you have read a certain article nga sugad hini ani aging kiklaim, mamiling kalawatin ibang mga alternatives kung ano ba talaga ang ungod. Okay? It doesn't mean that it's published in the internet, especially in Wikipedia. It doesn't mean nga tuod na talaga ito niya. Okay? Also, being skeptical means asking what evidence supports the original claim. Okay? Dapat namimiling kitahin mga ebidensya. Kaya that's how scientific evidence work. Okay? So, pero mo ipapakayana. Nga pag may nabaroan ka nga mga example, nagbaklohin ko luha gabi, di ko nito maupay, kaya mamamatay daw. Pakiani mo kalugaringon. Why? Is there an existing study on this? Tapos kung may adaman, an ini ba nga author hito nga study is a scientific researcher? Is it even a scientific evidence? May da mga specific evidence nga na cite? Or ini ba nga ako nikikitaan nga source is a reliable source? By Wikipedia na naman ito, di ba? Or whatsoever. Okay, so this is skepticism. Because there is often not enough evidence to fully evaluate a belief or claim, scientists also cultivate tolerance for uncertainty. By the way, an skepticism ng tolerance for uncertainty, mga critical thinking attitudes in it toward scientific psychology. So we should also have this tolerance for uncertainty. They accept that there are many things that they simply do not know, and we should acknowledge also na diri pa kita mga dati. Okay, we're still a work in progress. Ako personally, I believe nga diri pala ako sugod dito kadati, ano. There's still room for improvement or tolerance for uncertainty. But when we do not know the answer to an interesting and empirically testable question, well, science may be able to provide the answer. Ayan. So this is what the Unit 1 is all about. I hope that somehow naklaruhan ka mo. I know ang mga learning packet nga nagkaulpo ta iyo kay medyo magpudas, faded, because nakarisolad to hiya. But yan na naman, I just finished printing your LP2 and color diya, but gindraft ko hiya syempre to save gihapon in ink because as of the moment talaga kulang na hin mga ink and toners sa SSU, so it's just my way of parang initiative ko nala inihiya na mabuligan ng SSU. So ako na lang mismo akong personal na printer ko hiya print. But again, don't expect too much because naka-draft la natin pag-print. Okay? So, I hope by now, at the end hininga aton Unit 1, you are able to recognize the importance and research psychology and that kaparte talaga ito aton field and research. Research on human behavior and mental processes. So, haiyo application or assessment part, di ba may mga exercises ako naging butang. So, may nagpapakiana, damo nga mga pakiana how they will answer the exercise part on pages 19, 9 and 10, 19. Ayan, nasa rin based on your own experience. And exercise 1, you have learned about psychology. List 3 basic research questions and 3 applied research questions of interest to you. So again, ayaw kang ngalimot nga ang basic research questions, ang iyahin ni role or kumbaga goal is to achieve a more detailed and accurate understanding of human behavior. Okay? While an applied research naman, ginkakandak ito niya to address some practical problems. So, maglilista ka tulong ang basic research questions and tulong applied research questions. Okay? And the next one is, for each of the following intuitive beliefs about human behavior, list 3 reasons that it might be true and 3 reasons that it might not be true. So, may nagpapakiana. Ma'am, own opinion ko po ba? Ano ako nag-answer din he? So, the answer there is no. Because, gipopromote ko pala nga ni Hano that we should be scientific in our approach sa human behavior. So, this means that we have to research on existing mga literature kung may ada about hini nga akon ginpapakita iyo nga mga intuitive beliefs about human behavior. So, you will research. For example, number 1, you cannot truly love another person unless you love yourself. So, you will look for makaka-back up nga tuod talaga ini or real talaga ini or true that you cannot truly love another person unless you love yourself. And you will also look for 3 reasons nga posible diri ini ungod kasi nasa ring based on what I read in blah 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 blah. Ayan. So yun, mangita ka mo hin mga literature or anything that could support ini nga pag-answer ha exercise 2. Okay? So that's it. So the references na naton mga gin-discuss asya ni nakon gingamit. Yun. And also that's it. So, thank you. I hope that you have learned so much. Hini nga Unit 1. If may naman diri naklaruhan, please just send me a message sa ating group chat. I really appreciate kung na group chat ka mo magpakiana para bangin naman la ni mo pakiana is pakiana law tanim mo sa classmates, so ma-answer na naton diri na pa ulit-ulit. Okay, so I would like to say nga it's really hard to reply kada usa. Gadamo ako ni estudyante. So, at present, I have 78 students. So, imagine kung tanan ka mo mag-PPM haakon, it would be really a disaster. I think I won't be able to reply you. Bayan na ka mo ma-disappoint. So, ibutang na lang ito ng mga questions ha aton group chat. Kaya para kung bayan pares ka mong pakianay mo classmate, at least nababaton ko na hiya, bisa mo rin mong pa-erase itong question. Okay? Or better yet, have Facebook group page, dire ha group chat. Kasi ha group chat kasi kalaksi talaga it dalagan, dire ko na nahahabol. So, ha group page naman, mas madagmit. Kasi, few laan mga posts dito. Okay? So, this week, i-upload ko na an soft copy hand learning packet 2. So, learning packet 2 is about crafting a research topic. Kasi magkakamay na kita groupings for learning packet 2. Yes, mag-groupings na kamo because you will already start crafting a new research topic for this course, field methods. Okay? So, for now, mag-isip-isip na kamohan mga topics na gusto niyo i-conduct, but this will be done in groups. Diri niya individual. So, as to the planning, brainstorming, and the grouping, it will be done virtually. Tanan, group chat, tawag, video call, or any means nga diri ka mo magkiinorupod because we really encourage hit physical and social distancing yan ang mga panahon. So, ang groupings, magko-communicate na talaga mo virtually. Okay? So, if you have any questions, again, group chat lang. So, thank you. Have a blessed semester ahead. And I hope na tanan kita think positive lang. And test negative, of course, sa COVID-19. Pero stay positive, be patient with the process because tanan kita nakaka-experience hining pandemic. I know it's hard on your part, but it's also hard in our part. I know it's hard studying on your own, but it's really hard luwat on our part that we have to make modules, at the same time conduct online classes, or do this, diba? Like taking video discussions. So, tanan kita nag-a-adjust. So, please be patient. Always remember that you are a psychology practitioner. Makore na kung kita paan mga tuluson nga kita palugod it, may da client sunod nga mga tao. Okay? So, as much as possible, let's just inhale, exhale, ha mga nakaka-stress nga mga butang. Okay? So, God bless sa iyo nga tanan. See you on the next lesson. Bye!